Dexter Morgan always woke up 15 minutes before his alarm clock. This Tuesday morning was no exception. The clock on the bedside table read 5:45 when he opened his eyes and turned to his sleeping wife. Lorelei lay curled up on her side of the bed, her breathing barely audible. Dexter gazed at her profile for a few seconds, dimly visible in the pre-dawn twilight, her delicate nose, full lips and blonde hair scattered across the pillow. 12 years together, and she still seemed beautiful to him. He got up carefully, trying not to wake his wife. Lorelei usually slept until 7, and Dexter had long since grown accustomed to this morning ritual of solitude. First a shower. The kitchen greeted him with its usual silence. Yesterday's newspaper lay folded on the table. Dexter still preferred print to electronic news. He took out a frying pan and cracked 2 eggs. The yolks remained intact, just the way he liked them. The kettle whistled, filling the room with steam. Outside the window, Greenfield was beginning to wake up. A typical Midwestern town where everyone knew each other, if not by name, then at least by sight. As Dexter finished his second cup of coffee, a sleepy Lorelei appeared in the kitchen. She was wearing a short silk robe that Dexter had given her for her last birthday. "You're up early," he remarked, glancing at the clock. It was only 6:30. "I couldn't sleep," she said, stretching and opening the refrigerator. "Did you leave me any bacon? I thought you were still on that diet." "Not anymore. What's the point?" She sat down across from her husband. "You know, I talked to Vanessa yesterday." Dexter nodded, though deep down he disapproved of his wife's friendship with Vanessa Price, a divorced woman who, in his opinion, took life too lightly. But Lorelei and Vanessa worked together at the clinic and spent a lot of time together. "She told me about Key West," Lorelei continued, stirring her yogurt. "She says it's the peak season right now. White sand, turquoise water, cocktails at sunset." "Sounds expensive." Dexter took a sip of coffee. "We have savings, Dex," impatience slipped into Laurel's voice. "We can afford a real vacation once in a lifetime. We had a vacation last year, the lakes, remember? 3 days in a tent on a lake an hour away from home," Lorelei snorted. "That's not a vacation. That's a weekend getaway." Dexter put down the newspaper. They had had this conversation many times before. Over the past year, Lorelei had been talking more and more about traveling, new experiences, how life was passing them by and they hadn't seen anything. Dexter didn't understand this sudden desire for change. Their life was stable. They both had good jobs, their own house, a paid-off car. What more could they want? "I can't take time off right now," he said finally. "We have 2 new orders at the workshop and Frank is counting on me." "When can you go? In a month? 2 months?" Lorelei pushed her half-eaten yogurt aside. "There's always a reason to put it off. I work too, in case you haven't noticed, and I get tired too, and I have a right to rest too." "I'm not denying that." Dexter glanced at his watch. "I have to get going. We'll talk tonight." But there was no talk that evening. Dexter was delayed at the workshop. A customer's old Ford was in worse shape than expected, and he had to work late. When he returned home around 9, tired and covered in motor oil, Lorelei was sitting in the living room with a glass of wine staring at the TV. "Sorry I'm so late," Dexter said, kissing her on the cheek. "That damn carburetor wouldn't give way." "It's okay," she replied absently, without taking her eyes off the screen. "Your dinner is in the microwave." Dexter reheated the lasagna, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened his tablet to check his bills. He had been keeping the family budget for a long time, recording every penny spent. This pedantry annoyed Lorelei, but it allowed them to live debt-free, unlike many of their neighbors. "Your card," Dexter frowned as he looked at the statement. "There's a $200 purchase at Victoria's Secret. That's something new." Lorelei appeared in the kitchen doorway holding an empty glass. "I'm allowed to treat myself sometimes, aren't I?" She headed for the refrigerator to get a bottle of wine. Sure, Dexter shrugged. It's just that you usually buy your lingerie at the mall. Maybe I wanted something special. Lorelei filled her glass. Maybe I'm tired of being predictable. There was something new in her tone. A challenge, irritation, fatigue. Dexter looked up from his tablet and studied his wife closely. She had changed over the past few months, and it wasn't just the new haircut or her slimmer figure. Something was going on inside her, something he didn't understand. "Lori," he began gently, "what's going on with you?" She took a sip of wine, leaning against the refrigerator. "Nothing." Her voice sounded tired. "I just feel like I'm suffocating sometimes, like my life is one endless Groundhog Day. Home, work, home. Until retirement? And then what? Sit on the porch and watch the neighbors?" "That's called stability," Dexter put down. "And I'm not most people." Lorelei smiled bitterly. "Sometimes I look at Vanessa. Yes, she's divorced, but she's alive. She travels, meets different people, tries new things, and I feel like I've been stuck in the same place for 12 years. So, our marriage is stagnation to you?" Dexter's voice sounded hurt. "That's not what I meant," Lorelei sighed. "It's just that sometimes I feel like we're moving in different directions. You need stability, routine, peace, and I need something more." They fell silent. In the quiet kitchen, the wall clock ticked, an old-fashioned pendulum clock, a housewarming gift from her parents. Dexter suddenly felt the same way. "I tried to coordinate with you," she shrugged. "You always find reasons to decline. So I booked for myself and Vanessa. We're going for 5 days. Everything's already paid for." Dexter felt a wave of irritation rising inside him. He hated surprises, especially expensive ones. But what hurt him most was that Lorelei had made the decision on her own, without even informing him. "How much will it cost?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "I'm paying with my card," Lorelei replied, "from my salary." "That's not an answer." $1,500 per person. She looked him straight in the eye. "All inclusive, flight, hotel, meals." Dexter whistled. "Are you out of your mind? 3,000 for a 5-day vacation?" "Not 3, 1.5, Lorelei corrected. "Vanessa is paying her share." "We could use that money for something useful." Dexter shook his head. "Like a new washing machine. Ours is on its last legs. See?" Lorelei put her glass down on the table so hard that wine spilled onto the tablecloth. "There you go. There's always something more important, more useful. A washing machine, roofing, a new water heater. When are we going to live, Dexter? When are we going to enjoy what we have?" "We live pretty well," he objected. "We have a roof over our heads, food on the table, stable jobs." "And no joy," Lorelei almost shouted. "No surprises, no adventures. Just work, bills, TV shows in the evenings, and sex on a schedule, every Saturday after dinner." The last sentence hit Dexter's pride hard. Their sex life had indeed become predictable, but he thought it was due to fatigue, 12 years of marriage, the natural fading of passion. He didn't think it bothered Lorelei that much. "If you're so unhappy with me," he said slowly, "why do you stay?" The question hung in the air. Lorelei opened her mouth to answer, but then changed her mind. She silently picked up her glass, poured the remaining wine into the sink, and headed for the kitchen door. "I'm going to bed," she said over her shoulder. "I have to get up early tomorrow." Dexter remained seated at the table, staring at the half-eaten lasagna and the wine stain on the tablecloth. Something important had just happened between them. Some invisible line had been crossed. The next few days passed in tense silence. He and Lorelei communicated only when necessary, discussing household matters, coordinating plans, but avoiding any mention of the upcoming trip or their conversation in the kitchen. Dexter noticed that his wife was staying late at work more often, and spending long evenings texting someone on her phone, turning the screen away when he walked by. On Friday, 2 days before their departure, Lorelai started packing her suitcase. Dexter stood in the bedroom doorway, watching her carefully fold her summer dresses and swimsuits. "Are you really going?" he finally asked. Lorelai didn't even turn around. "Yes, Dex, I want to. I need this." "What about me?" The question slipped out before he could stop it, and Dexter immediately regretted it. He sounded pathetic, almost childish. Lorelai stopped and turned to him. "You can always come with us," she said. "It's a double room, but I'm sure we can arrange for an extra bed. You know I can't just drop everything at the last minute." "Exactly," she said, returning to her packing. "You always can't, and I don't want to wait any longer." On Sunday morning, Dexter drove Lorelai to the airport. They were silent the whole way. He helped her unload her suitcase and gave her an awkward hug goodbye. "Have a good rest," he said, trying to smile. "Bring me a magnet for the fridge." Lorelai smiled back, the first time she had smiled in days. "I will, and maybe something else." She waved goodbye and disappeared through the terminal doors. Dexter watched her go, feeling strangely uneasy. He didn't like this trip. Driving home on the deserted highway, Dexter turned on the radio. An old Eagles song, "Lion Eyes," filled the car. "The city's full of men who'll take her. She'll find an old friend soon." Don Henley sang, and Dexter felt like those words had something to do with him, with Lorelai, with the crack that was slowly but surely growing between them. The house was quiet and empty. Dexter went through the rooms, gathering his wife's scattered belongings. A hair clip on the kitchen counter, a forgotten book on the sofa, nail polish in the bathroom. He neatly placed everything on her nightstand as if performing some kind of ritual. In the evening, he sent her a message. "How was your flight? Everything okay?" The reply came only 2 hours later. "Everything's great. The hotel is gorgeous. We're going to the beach tomorrow." No details, no "I miss you" or "I love you." Dexter put his phone on charge and turned on the TV, trying to drown out his anxious thoughts. He had 5 days of loneliness ahead of him, the longest in their entire life together. He tried to keep himself busy. During the day, he worked in his workshop. In the evenings, he watched sports broadcasts or tinkered with minor household repairs that he had been putting off for a long time. Sometimes he wrote to Lorelai, but her replies became shorter and shorter. Sunbathing. Went on an excursion. Everything's fine. On the third day, she stopped responding to his messages altogether. Dexter grew increasingly worried. He felt that something was finally, unable to bear it any longer, he called her. Long rings, then voicemail. He didn't leave a message. Half an hour later, she sent a text message. "Sorry, couldn't talk. We're at a pool party. It's noisy. Everything's fine. Don't worry." Dexter looked at his watch. It was 11 o'clock at night. At that time of night in Greenfield, everyone was usually asleep, getting ready for the next day at work. But of course, things were different at a resort. Parties, cocktails, dancing. He tried to imagine Lorelai in that setting, smiling, sipping something exotic from a glass with a little umbrella, maybe dancing. With whom? With Vanessa? With other vacationers? The thought struck him unexpectedly. Dexter had never considered himself jealous. In 12 years of marriage, he had never had reason to doubt Lorelai's fidelity. But now, for the first time, he felt an unpleasant chill of suspicion. She had changed so much lately, becoming distant and irritable over little things. And this sudden passion for travel, for new experiences. What if it wasn't just boredom? What if she just needed an excuse to get away? Dexter shook his head, dismissing the ridiculous thoughts. Lorelei was his wife, the mother of his future children. The day of Lorelei's return came on a cloudy Friday morning. Dexter woke up at 5:30, even though the plane wasn't due to arrive until 11. He tidied the house thoroughly, changed the bed linen, and even bought a bouquet of her favorite lilies. All week he had tried to suppress the anxiety that was gnawing at him. Lorelei had hardly been in touch, just a few short messages a day, not a single phone call. That's how it is on vacation, he told himself as he drove to the airport. The arrivals hall was crowded with people waiting for their loved ones. Dexter looked at the board. The flight from Miami had arrived on time. He eagerly scanned the stream of passengers until he finally spotted a familiar figure. Tanned, wearing sunglasses and a light blue dress he hadn't seen before, Lorelei looked like a stranger. Vanessa was walking beside her, laughing loudly at some joke.
"Hi." Dexter stepped forward, awkwardly hugging his wife. She smelled of unfamiliar perfume, tart, with notes of musk. "Did you have a good rest?" "Delightful." Lorelei smiled, but it seemed forced. "The weather was perfect all week." "Hi, Dex." Vanessa patted him on the shoulder. "Your wife was a real hit at the resort. All the bartenders knew her by name by the end of the week." Dexter felt a twinge of irritation, either from Vanessa's familiar tone or from her words. "Really?" He looked at Lorelei. "You didn't mention you were going to bars." "It's a resort, Dexter." She rolled her eyes. "Everyone goes to bars. It's part of the program." In the car, Lorelei sat in the back seat with Vanessa. She had to give her friend a ride home. The women were talking quietly, giggling from time to time. Dexter glanced in the rear-view mirror, catching unfamiliar expressions on his wife's face, new gestures he hadn't noticed before. She looked relaxed and happy, which was rare for her at home. After dropping Vanessa off at her apartment, they drove home. Lorelei moved to the front seat but was silent for most of the ride, immersed in her phone. "Who were you texting?" "Just checking social media," Lorelei said, blocking her phone so he couldn't see the screen. "I missed a lot this week." At home, she went straight to the bathroom to wash off the road, as she put it. Dexter stayed in the bedroom with her suitcase. He hadn't planned on rummaging through his wife's things, but the zipper came undone when he put the suitcase on the bed. The clothes were folded carelessly, unlike Lorelei's usual meticulousness. On top was that blue dress. Dexter picked it up carefully. Light silk, obviously expensive. He didn't remember Lorelei buying anything like this. Underneath the dress was lingerie from Victoria's Secret. Lace, revealing. Nothing like the practical sets Lorelei usually wore. Dexter felt a heaviness in his lower abdomen, a mixture of excitement and strange anxiety. The sound of water in the bathroom subsided. Dexter hastily closed the suitcase, leaving it for his mistress to sort out. "I'm terribly tired." Lorelei appeared in the doorway in her bathrobe, her hair damp. "I'm going to lie down for a while, if you don't mind." "Of course," Dexter nodded. "Would you like some coffee in bed?" "No, thank you," she shook her head. "I just want to take a nap." She went upstairs, and Dexter remained in the kitchen, thinking about his strange feelings. What was bothering him so much? A new dress? Perfume? Lace lingerie? People often buy new things on vacation, especially women. Nothing unusual. But somewhere on the edge of his consciousness, an unpleasant thought nagged at him. In all their years of marriage, Lorelei had never spent money on things like that. "Is it practical?" she always asked when choosing clothes. Now, in the evening they ordered pizza, a tradition after long trips. "Tell me more about your vacation," Dexter suggested, pouring her some wine. "What did you and Vanessa do?" "Nothing special," Lorelei shrugged. "The beach, the pool, excursions. The usual vacation stuff. What about the pool party? You wrote that you were there. Yes, they organized something for the guests almost every evening. She took a sip of wine. Music, cocktails, entertainment. Did you meet anyone? Dexter tried to make his voice sound casual. Lorelei froze for a moment. What do you mean? Well, other vacationers. Usually at resorts, people socialize and make friends. Oh, you mean that? She exhaled with relief. Yes, of course. A couple from Seattle, a family with children from Chicago, just regular tourists. Her phone vibrated again. Lorelei hurriedly grabbed it. A colleague from work. Lorelei put the phone down. About next week's schedule. On Friday night? We're not as strict about working hours as you are. She suddenly became irritable. Can I at least have one day at home without being interrogated? Dexter raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. I'm sorry. I just missed you and wanted to know how your day was. Lorelei softened. I missed you too, she said, although Dexter detected a hint of insincerity in her voice. I'm just tired from traveling. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow, I promise. But the next day she went to the hairdresser, then met Vanessa for lunch and didn't come home until evening. Again, she didn't let go of her phone, smiled mysteriously when she received messages, and answered Dexter's questions with one-word answers. On Monday, Lorelei returned to work, and Dexter hoped that everything would gradually return to normal. But in the evenings, she began to stay late, first a meeting, then a corporate dinner, then just traffic jams. She came home tired, took a shower, then either sat in front of the TV with a glass of wine or went to bed early. She didn't snuggle up to Dexter in bed like she used to, avoiding intimacy. Too tired, headache, got to get up early tomorrow. On Wednesday, 5 days after Lorelei's return, Dexter couldn't take it anymore. She was late again and didn't answer her phone. He called the clinic where she worked. Hello, is Lorelei Morgan there? He asked the secretary. I'm sorry, but Mrs. Morgan left early today, replied a female voice. Dexter glanced at his watch. It was almost 8 in the evening. Where could she have gone if she wasn't feeling well? And why had she lied to him and said she was staying late at work? He was sitting in the living room when the front door finally opened at 10 o'clock. Lorelei came in, humming something under her breath. She smelled of the same unfamiliar perfume, only stronger. Where were you? Dexter asked bluntly. Lorelei flinched when she saw him in the dimly lit room. God, Dex, you scared me. She threw her bag on the table by the door. At work, of course. I told you. I called the clinic. You weren't there since 4. Her face froze for a moment, then she smiled. Too broad. My colleagues, Lorelei began to get annoyed. You don't know them. What kind of interrogation is this? It's just that you've never been to such gatherings before, he shrugged. And you didn't tell me. I don't have to report my every move. She headed for the stairs. I'm going to take a shower. Dexter didn't continue the conversation, but his anxiety only grew. After her shower, Lorelei went straight to bed without even eating dinner. Dexter lay awake for a long time, listening to her breathing and trying to understand what was happening to their marriage. The next day at breakfast, he decided to approach her from a different angle. I was thinking, he began as casually as possible, maybe we should go somewhere together. A vacation would be a good idea. Maybe a weekend in the mountains, or to the lake. On the weekend? She shook her head. I'm sorry, I can't. I have plans with Vanessa. What plans? Shopping, the salon, just girl stuff. She waved him off. Next weekend, maybe. But Dexter knew that next weekend there would be another excuse. Something had changed, and that something was scaring him more and more. That evening, when Lorelei was late again, he couldn't resist and opened her laptop. They shared the same password, their wedding date, a simple combination they both used. He felt uncomfortable rummaging through his wife's personal belongings, but his concern overcame his guilt. The browser history showed nothing unusual, but when he opened her email, he noticed correspondence with an airline, a confirmation of tickets to Key West. Dexter clicked on the email. 2 tickets, one for Lorelai Morgan and one for Vanessa Price. Everything matched what his wife had told him. He was about to close the page when he noticed a detail. The booking had been made 3 weeks before their conversation about the vacation. Lorelai had lied, saying she booked everything after he refused to go. It was a small thing, but it made Dexter wonder, why would his wife lie about such a minor detail? And if she lied about that, could she have lied about other things? He closed his laptop and went into the bedroom. An inexplicable urge made him open Lorelai's closet. Deep inside, under a pile of sweaters, he found a bag from the same Victoria's Secret store. Inside was another piece of lace lingerie, red, provocative, not at all in the style of his modest and practical wife. The price tag read $290. There was no such amount on their credit card statement. At work, Dexter couldn't concentrate. His thoughts kept returning to Lorelai's strange behavior, the perfume, the lingerie, the nighttime messages, and the mysterious Wilson. When he mixed up the details for the 3rd time, nearly ruining a customer's order, his partner Reiner took him aside. "What's going on with Lorelai?" he said finally. "She's changed since that trip." Reiner whistled. "In what way?" "She comes home late. She's on her phone all the time. She doesn't talk normally." Dexter took another drag. "And she has new perfume and new lingerie and everything." "Wait," Reiner frowned. "You think she's cheating on you?" Dexter flinched. The thought had crossed his mind, of course, but he had pushed it away. Hearing it out loud from someone else was like a punch in the gut. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I don't want to believe it. We've been together for 12 years, but something's definitely wrong." "Check her phone," Reiner advised. "All the clues are always there." "I can't go through her things without permission," Dexter objected. "Then live with the doubt," Reiner shrugged. "Or ask her directly. But if she's really hiding something, asking her directly will only make her more—" On Friday, Lorelai announced that she was going away with Vanessa for the weekend. Her friend had invited her to her parents' country house. "Last time you went with her to a resort, now it's a country house," Dexter remarked, unable to hide his irritation. "When are we going to go somewhere together?" "I suggested Key West," Lorelai retorted. "You turned me down. And if I suggest going somewhere together now, will you say yes?" Lorelai hesitated. "Of course, but not this weekend. I already promised Vanessa." "Sure," Dexter said with a bitter smile. "Vanessa's more important." "Don't be dramatic," Lorelai rolled her eyes. "It's just a weekend with my friend. No big deal." But when she left on Saturday morning, Dexter couldn't shake the feeling that he was being deceived. That feeling only grew stronger when he found an earring on the bathroom floor that evening, a small gold star. He had never seen one like it on Lorelai. Perhaps it was a new purchase. But why hadn't she taken it with her for the weekend? Or did it mean something else? On Sunday, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, he logged into their credit card account online. The latest transactions included a purchase at a jewelry store, $350, 2 weeks ago. Lorelai hadn't mentioned buying jewelry. He checked the call history on their home phone, several calls to an unfamiliar number, always after he left for work. Dexter wrote down the number, planning to look it up later. When Lorelai returned on Sunday evening, he greeted her with a forced smile. She looked rested, her cheeks flushed. "How was your trip?" he asked, helping her with her bag. "Wonderful," she smiled. Vanessa's parents' house is just lovely. A real fireplace, a terrace overlooking the lake. You'd love it. Maybe we can go together next time. Sure, Lorelei agreed easily, but he noticed she was avoiding his gaze. By the way, have you seen my star earrings? I can't find them. Dexter took an earring out of his pocket. This one? Yes, she breathed with relief. Where did you find it? On the bathroom floor, he said, looking at her intently. I don't remember you wearing those before. I bought them before the trip, she replied. Dexter nodded, trying not to show that he had noticed the contradiction. Gold earrings. How could they go with a blue dress? But he decided not to dwell on it. Not yet. That evening, while helping Lorelei unpack her bag, he casually asked, "What jewelry store did you go to last week? I noticed a purchase on the statement." Lorelei froze for a moment, then continued putting things away. "Oh, that. I bought a birthday present for my mom," she said, not looking up. "A bracelet she's wanted for a long time. Your mom's birthday is in 3 months." When she went into the bathroom, Dexter sat down on the bed, wrapping his arms around his head. She was definitely hiding something. All the signs were there. The lie about her whereabouts, the secret shopping, the change in behavior, the new perfume. But he still couldn't believe that his Lorelei, could cheat on him. I just need proof, he thought. Some kind of irrefutable evidence, one way or the other, so I can finally rest easy or find out the truth. The phone in Lorelei's bag flashed a notification. Dexter looked at the closed bathroom door and heard the sound of running water. He hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone and unlocking it. In 12 years of marriage, they had never had passwords for each other's phones. It was their unspoken rule, a symbol of trust. He opened his messages and saw a conversation with a contact named Wilson. "I miss you already," read the last message. "This weekend was magical. When will we see each other again?" Dexter felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. Then he heard the shower turn off and quickly put the phone back, trying to leave it in exactly the same position. When Lorelei came out of the bathroom, he was already lying in bed, pretending to be asleep. But sleep didn't come all night. His thoughts revolved around one question. Who was this Wilson? And what should he do now that his worst fears seemed to be confirmed? Dexter woke up with a heavy head. The clock showed 4:30 a.m., an hour and a half before his usual wake-up time. Lorelei was sleeping next to him, her back turned toward him. In the dim light of the bedroom, he studied her silhouette, trying to piece together the thoughts that had tormented him all night. Who was Wilson? What was going on between him and his wife? He had little doubt about the answer, but some part of him still refused to believe in betrayal. Quietly getting out of bed, Dexter went down to the kitchen. Coffee seemed too strong at such an early hour, so he just sat at the table staring out the window at the dark street. In the corner of the kitchen, Lorelei's laptop screen glowed dimly. She had forgotten to turn it off before going to bed. Hesitating for a moment, Dexter opened the lid. The device was unlocked. His first impulse was to check her email or messages, but Dexter knew that Lorelei kept her most personal things on her phone. Instead, he opened the browser and logged into her Instagram account. Lorelei rarely posted anything, a few photos a year, mostly nature and home scenes. But maybe she checked other people's pages. In her browsing history, Dexter saw the account of the resort where he and Vanessa had stayed. He opened it, a typical hotel page with photos of rooms, pools, restaurants, and happy guests. Nothing unusual. But then he noticed a series of videos under the hashtag #KeyWestNights, the pool parties Lorelai had mentioned. Dexter started watching them one after another. Tourists having fun, cocktails, dancing under fresh palm trees and twinkling fairy lights. In the fifth video, he saw her, Lorelai, in the same blue dress he had found in the suitcase. She was dancing, smiling, holding a bright cocktail in her hand, but that wasn't what made his heart ache. Next to Lorelai was a man dancing, tall, tanned, with a short, dark beard. His arm was around Lorelai's waist and her head was thrown back in laughter. Off to the side, at the bar, he could see Vanessa, engrossed in conversation with the bartender. Dexter rewound the video and watched it again. There was no doubt about it. His wife was too close to this stranger. Their poses, smiles, and glances betrayed an intimacy that went beyond a casual resort encounter. His heart was pounding in his throat when Dexter opened the resort's Facebook page. There were more photos here, sorted by date. He found the album for Lorelai's week-long vacation and began methodically looking through the pictures. In the third photo, he found what he was looking for, a group of vacationers by the pool. Among them were Lorelai, Vanessa, and that same bearded man sitting uncomfortably close to his wife. The caption listed the names. Our regular guests, Jason and Carol Baker from Austin, Tom Wilson from Chicago, Vanessa Price and Loralee Moore. Dex? She rubbed her eyes. Why aren't you in bed? She glanced at the clock. 5 in the morning. I can't sleep, he said hoarsely. Who is Tom Wilson? Lorelai flinched, her hand reaching for the teapot, frozen in midair. What? Tom Wilson from Chicago, Dexter repeated, keeping his voice down. The one who writes to you saying he misses you, the one you spent that magical weekend with. The color drained from Lorelai's face. You read my messages? Her voice trembled with indignation. How dare you? Don't dodge the question. Dexter stood up, looking her in the eyes. I saw everything. The photos from the resort, the video of you dancing. I know you're not just acquaintances, and I know there was no country house. You were with him. It's not what you think, began Lorelai, but Dexter interrupted her. No, I'm listening. He crossed his arms over his chest. Explain. Try to explain why my wife lies to me, hides from me, buys expensive lingerie I've never seen, and exchanges messages with another man. She was silent, staring at her hands. It's just a fling, she finally said quietly. Nothing serious. Tom. We met at a resort. He was alone, and I was feeling lonely. You're always busy. We have nothing in common anymore. And that's why you decided to jump into bed with the first man you met. Dexter couldn't hold back the bitterness in his voice. 12 years of marriage, Lorelai. 12 years that mean nothing to you. That's not true. She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. I love you, Dex. Tom is just a mistake. A moment of weakness. A moment? Dexter smiled bitterly. You've been seeing him for 2 weeks. You planned everything in advance. A vacation without me, new clothes, lies about being late for work and spending the weekend with Vanessa's parents. By the way, she knew everything, didn't she? Covered for you? Lorelai nodded silently, tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want it to turn out this way. I just needed attention, passion, something new. And this Wilson gave you all that? Dexter shook his head. What about loyalty, respect, honor? Does that mean nothing to you? Of course it does. She tried to take his hand, but he pulled it away. Dex, please, I realize. Trust, Lorelai. Dexter looked at her as if she were a stranger. "You can't rebuild it once it's broken, and you broke it into a million pieces." He turned and left the kitchen, going up to the bedroom. He opened the closet and took out the suitcase, the same one Lorelei had brought back from Key West. He began to pack her things into it, methodically, carefully, as he had done everything in his life. Lorelei appeared in the doorway when the suitcase was already half full. "What are you doing?" Fear sounded in her voice. "Packing your things," Dexter replied without looking at her. "You're leaving. Today." "Dex, no." She ran up to him and grabbed his hands. "Please don't do this. We can work things out. Give me a chance." "Did you give our marriage a chance?" He finally looked her in the face. "Did you even try to solve our problems before seeking comfort elsewhere? Or did you just—" "I tried," she whispered. "I told you I needed attention, adventure, something new. You didn't listen." "No, Lorelei." Dexter shook his head. "Talking about a trip, about boredom isn't an attempt to save a marriage. It's an ultimatum. Do what I want or I'll find someone who will. And you found someone." He continued packing. Lorelei stood with her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. "Where am I going to go?" she asked finally. "To Vanessa," Dexter suggested. "Or to your Wilson, or to your parents, I don't care. Just get out of my house." "It's my house too," she said, her voice suddenly steely. "I have as much right to it as you do." "Legally, yes," Dexter agreed. "The papers are in both our names. But morally, Lorelei? After what you—" Lorelei was silent. Dexter closed the suitcase and placed it by the door. "You have an hour," he said. "Gather the rest of your things. I'll be downstairs." He went down to the living room and sat down on the sofa. His thoughts were jumbled. His emotions were running high. Anger gave way to pain, pain to disappointment, disappointment to a strange, dull indifference. 12 years of her life had been wiped out in 2 weeks. 40 minutes later, Lorelei came downstairs. She was wearing a strict dark dress, as if for a funeral. In her hands she carried a second suitcase, smaller, and a handbag. "I called Vanessa," she said. "I'll stay with her until I find an apartment." Dexter nodded without looking up. "Dex, she faltered. "I'm really sorry, and I still love you. Please think about giving us another chance." "Lorelei," Dexter finally looked up. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed us. Everything we built together. We talked about children, about traveling to Europe when we retired, about sitting in rocking chairs on our porch 30 years from now. You didn't just ruin the present. You destroyed our future." "I know," she whispered, "and I hate myself for it." "I don't hate you," Dexter replied after a pause, "but I can't trust you anymore, and without trust, there is no marriage." She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks again. Dexter walked her to the door and helped her carry her suitcases out. Vanessa's car was waiting outside. "I'll call you," Lorelei said before getting into the car, "about the rest of my things and legal matters." Dexter closed the door without answering. Vanessa, sitting behind the wheel, shot him a reproachful glance, as if he were to blame for what had happened. The car pulled away, taking his wife away. Returning to the house, Dexter felt a deafening emptiness. He walked through the rooms, lingering over the things Lorelei hadn't had time or hadn't wanted to take with her. The framed photographs, the mug with "Mrs. Always Right" written on it, the house plants she had cared for. It all looked like the set of an abandoned theater. He opened the closet in the hallway. Her coat was still hanging there, next to his jackets. Finally, wiping his eyes, he straightened up. He had to move on, somehow live with this new reality. The first few days after Lorelei left were a blur. Dexter went to work, came home, mechanically prepared meals, watched TV without paying attention to what was on, went to bed, and stared at the ceiling for hours. He ignored Lorelei's calls and messages. His friends and colleagues noticed the change. He had become quiet, distracted, and often made mistakes at work. Reiner was the first to ask him directly. "What's wrong, buddy?" he asked during lunch break. "You look terrible." "Lorelei left," Dexter replied. "Actually, I kicked her out. She cheated on me." Reiner whistled. "Damn. I'm sorry, buddy. Are you sure?" "Yes," Dexter nodded. "I saw the evidence. She didn't even deny it." "What now?" "I don't know," Dexter replied honestly. "I never thought I'd be in this situation. 12 years of marriage. I don't know how to be alone. If you need a drink or just someone to talk to, call me anytime." Reiner squeezed his shoulder. "And don't stay alone in this mess. You need to distract yourself. Get out somewhere." Dexter nodded but didn't follow his advice. He spent his evenings at home, often with a bottle of whiskey. He had hardly ever drunk before, but now alcohol helped numb the pain and help him sleep. On the 10th day after Lorelei left, her mother called. "Dexter, dear," she began anxiously. "What's going on? Lorelei is staying with a friend and says you two broke up. Did something happen? She didn't tell you?" "Dexter, only that you had a fight and that you kicked her out," the elderly woman sighed. "I know my daughter, Dexter. She's stubborn and can say things she doesn't mean when she's angry. But 12 years together is no joke. Can't you two make up?" Dexter listened as his mother-in-law defended her daughter without even knowing the nature of the conflict. Of course, Lorelei hadn't told them the truth. "She cheated on you, Mrs. Douglas," he said finally, interrupting the stream of conciliatory words. "She's having an affair with another man. She told me herself." There was silence on the line. I didn't know." The elderly woman's voice trembled. "She didn't say anything." "Of course she didn't," Dexter sighed. "And I would have preferred you to hear it from her, not from me." After talking to his mother-in-law, Dexter felt a strange sense of relief. Some of the weight he had been carrying had been lifted. He was no longer the only one who knew the truth. In the second week, Lorelei came to collect the rest of her things. Dexter was at work. He had deliberately avoided seeing her as he wasn't ready. When he returned home, he discovered that not only her clothes and cosmetics were gone, but also some things they had bought together. The coffee maker they had chosen together, a painting from the bedroom, even half of the kitchen utensils. There was a letter from a lawyer in his mailbox. Lorelei was filing for divorce. In the bathroom, Dexter found a forgotten hair clip. He stared at it for a long time, remembering how Lorelei used to gather her hair in front of the mirror every morning, how he kissed her neck when she raised her arms to fix her hair. A wave of longing washed over him, not for the cheating Lorelei, but for the woman he had known for 12 years, with whom he had planned to spend the rest of his life. The woman who no longer existed. He threw the hair clip in the trash, trying not to think about the symbolism of the gesture. The third week brought new challenges. Everyone at work already knew about the breakup. Some offered their condolences, some pretended nothing had happened, and some, especially the women, looked at him with poorly concealed disapproval. Dexter overheard the secretary in the reception area say to a colleague, "Poor Lorelei." Apparently, Lorelei was spreading her version of the story. Dexter didn't bother to intervene. He didn't have the energy for excuses and explanations. Let people think what they wanted. He knew the truth. Reiner tried to pull him out of his depression, inviting him to bars, fishing, even on a date with one of his female acquaintances. Dexter refused. The pain of betrayal was still too fresh to think about a new relationship. In the evenings, he sat in the backyard, looking at the stars and thinking, where had he gone wrong? What had he done wrong? Was he too boring, too predictable, too immersed in his work? Could he have prevented the affair if he had been more attentive, if he had listened to Lorelei when she talked about her desires? Deep down, he knew the answer. No one had forced Lorelei to cheat on him. It was her choice, her decision to betray his trust. But understanding, at the end of the third week, Dexter finally decided to change his surroundings. He took time off work and drove to the lake, the same one where he and Lorelei had spent their last vacation together. The cold air, the smell of pine trees, the silence, it all helped clear his mind. Sitting on the shore, looking at the calm water, Dexter felt something like peace for the first time in a long time. Life wasn't over. It had just taken a different path. Now he had to learn to walk that path alone. At the beginning of the fourth week after Lorelei's departure, the phone rang. Dexter was sitting in the kitchen looking through papers from his divorce lawyer. When he saw his wife's name on the screen, he hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "Hello," he said dryly. "Dex," Lorelei's voice sounded strange, shaky, uncertain. "We need to talk, in person." "I don't think we have anything to talk about," Dexter replied. "All property issues can be settled through our lawyers." "It's not about the property," she sighed deeply. "Please, Dex, this is really important. Can I come over?" Something in her tone made Dexter wary. He had never heard Lorelei speak like that before, as if she were on the verge of tears. "All right," he said finally. "Come over in an hour." Exactly 60 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Dexter opened the door, trying to keep a calm expression on his face. Lorelei looked pale and haggard, not at all like she had 3 weeks ago when she left with Vanessa. She was wearing a baggy sweater and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. No sign of the new style she had adopted after her trip to the resort. "Come in." Dexter stepped aside, letting her into the house. Lorelei took a few steps and stopped in the hallway, looking around as if she were in an unfamiliar place. Dexter noticed that she was nervously fiddling with the strap of her purse. "Tea? Coffee?" he offered, trying to be as polite as possible. "No, thank you," she shook her head. I need to tell you something." "Then let's go into the living room," Dexter pointed to the sofa. He sat down in an armchair opposite her, keeping his distance. Lorelei sat down on the edge of the sofa, still clutching her purse as if it were a lifeline. "Dex, she faltered, closed her eyes, then continued. "I'm pregnant." Dexter felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. These words, the very ones he had longed to hear for the past few years, the ones that should have brought him joy. 3 tests, Lorelei nodded, "and the symptoms, morning sickness, fatigue, mood swings, I have no doubt." Dexter was silent, trying to process the situation. A child, their child, something they had talked about for years but always put off, first because of their careers, then because of home renovations, then because of financial considerations. But now, when their marriage was falling apart, when Lorelei had cheated on him with another man, suddenly Dexter remembered. They had indeed shared a rare moment of intimacy before her departure. Lorelei had been unusually passionate and forward. At the time, it had seemed like a sudden rekindling of a dying flame. But now, was it an attempt to hide her subsequent infidelity? Or, even worse, a deliberate conception of a child for manipulation? "Are you saying you knew you were pregnant when we broke up?" he asked, watching her reaction closely. "No." Lorelei shook her head. "I only found out yesterday. I missed my period, so I took a test. 3 tests, to be exact. All positive." Dexter leaned back in his chair, studying his wife. She looked, "I don't know." Lorelei sank back onto the sofa, her shoulders slumping. "But it's our child, Dex. Yours and mine. No matter what happened between us." Dexter looked at the woman he had once loved more than anything in the world and tried to sort out his feelings. Anger, resentment, distrust. They were all still there. But now there was something else, a vague sense of responsibility, a duty to an unborn child. If, of course, the child was really his. "I need to think," he said finally. "This is too sudden." "Of course," Lorelei nodded. "We're not in touch anymore." Lorelei shook her head. "It was a mistake, a passing infatuation. I realized that as soon as I left you, but it was too late to apologize. I thought you'd never forgive me. And now everything has changed." Dexter smirked inwardly. How convenient. Wilson disappeared as soon as the pregnancy showed up. Coincidence? He doubted it. "I have to go." Lorelei stood up. "Call me when you're ready to talk. And Dex, I'm really sorry about everything." He walked her to the door and nodded goodbye. When Lorelei's car disappeared around the corner, Dexter returned to the living room and poured himself a whiskey, a double. The news of the pregnancy had turned his world upside down. If the child was really his, what did that mean for their relationship? Should he take Lorelei back? What if the child wasn't his? What if this was just another lie, another manipulation? He couldn't sleep that night. Dexter tossed and turned in bed, going over all the options. In the morning, he called Reiner and asked to meet. "Lorelei is pregnant," he said without preamble when they settled into a corner of a small cafe. Reiner whistled. "Are you sure it's yours?" "She says it's mine." Dexter shrugged. "She explained in detail when it could have happened." "Sounds plausible, but you don't trust her anymore," Reiner finished. "And you're right not to. Listen, I don't want to sound cynical, but this is all very convenient for her, don't you think? She cheated on you, you kicked her out, and now, boom, she's pregnant. And suddenly her lover disappears from the scene." "There's a reliable way to find out," Reiner said, taking a sip of coffee. "A DNA test. You can even do them during pregnancy these days. Of course, there's a small risk to the fetus, but if she's so sure the child is yours, she shouldn't object." Dexter thought about it. He never thought he'd find himself in this situation, questioning the paternity of his own child, demanding a DNA test from the woman he'd lived with for 12 years. It seemed like the plot of a cheap melodrama, not his life. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Thanks for the advice." That evening, Dexter's mother called. They usually talked once a week, but lately he had been avoiding these conversations, not wanting to discuss the divorce and the affair. "Dexter, dear," his mother's voice sounded agitated. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell us what, Mom?" Dexter tensed, sensing something was wrong. "The baby, of course. Lorelei called us today. She said she's pregnant and you kicked her out of the house when you found out. Is that true?" Dexter felt a wave of anger rising inside him. Lorelei hadn't wasted any time in spreading her version of events. "Mom, that's not true," he replied, trying to sound calm. "I only found out about the pregnancy yesterday when Lorelei came to see me. I kicked her out 3 weeks ago after I found out she had been unfaithful to me." "Unfaithful?" His mother was clearly shocked. "Lorelei didn't say anything like that. She said you had a fight over her vacation, and then you found out about the baby and asked her to leave because you weren't ready to be a father." "And you believe that nonsense?" Dexter was indignant. "Mom, Lorelei and I have been talking about children for years. I've always wanted to be a father. She lied to you just like she lied to me." There was silence on the line. Then "Are you sure she cheated on you? Maybe it's a misunderstanding?" Dexter sighed heavily. Apparently, he would have to go through this with all his loved ones. "Mom," she confessed. "I found photos, videos, messages from her lover. She didn't deny it. She just tried to explain why. And now it seems she's using her pregnancy to manipulate me and make me look bad in front of the family." "Oh, Dexter," his mother's voice trembled. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. She sounded so sincere." She said you can still fix things for the sake of the baby. Believe me, I've been thinking about that too, Dexter replied wearily. But first, I need to make sure the baby is really mine. After talking to his mother, Dexter felt devastated. He had always believed that his family knew him better than anyone else. The next day, he learned that the story of the heartless husband who kicked out his pregnant wife had spread among their mutual friends and acquaintances. His phone was ringing off the hook. Some people cautiously asked if it was true, others openly condemned him, and some offered to mediate a reconciliation. Dexter stopped answering his phone and threw himself into his work as if it were a lifeline. On Friday, he received a call from the church that he and Lorelei sometimes attended on holidays. The pastor expressed concern about the situation and suggested they meet to talk. Dexter politely declined. "It's not what you've been told," he said, "but I'm not ready to discuss personal problems with strangers." "Young man," the pastor's voice was stern, "marriage is a sacred union before God. No matter what difficulties arise, you must work through them together, especially if Lorelei thought about the sanctity of marriage," Dexter replied coldly. "She wouldn't have slept with another man." After these words, the pastor fell silent and then hurriedly said goodbye. At the supermarket where Dexter stopped after work, the cashier, a woman who had known him and Lorelei for many years, gave him a disapproving look. "How could you do that to a pregnant woman?" she muttered, handing him his change. "Men." Dexter didn't respond. He realized that Lorelei was deliberately creating an image of herself as a victim, an unhappy pregnant woman abandoned by a heartless husband. People easily believed such a story without even trying to find out the other side. On Sunday, Lorelei called again. "Dex," she began without preamble, "I made an appointment for my first checkup with the gynecologist. I wanted to know if you would go with me." Dexter hesitated to answer. Part of him wanted to agree, to see the first ultrasound, to hear the heartbeat of a child who might be his flesh and blood. But another part remembered the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. "Lorelei," he said finally, "I want to take a DNA test." There was silence on the line, then an indignant voice. "You doubt that this is your child? After 12 years of marriage? After you cheated on me?" "Yes, I have doubts," Dexter replied honestly. "I know the test can be done during pregnancy. It's safe for the baby. I won't let you stick needles in me because of your paranoia." Lorelei's voice trembled with anger. "This is disgusting, Dexter. I thought you were better than this." "If you're so sure the child is mine, why not confirm it?" he asked calmly. "I can't believe you're asking this," Lorelei cried. "My words aren't enough for you?" "Your words have already deceived me," Dexter reminded her. "And now you're deceiving everyone around you by telling them that I left you because you were pregnant. So no, your words aren't enough." Lorelei abruptly hung up the phone. Dexter had expected this, but still felt a pang of disappointment. The next day, he received a message from his sister. "How could you? She's carrying your child." Clearly, Lorelei was continuing to spread her version of events, now embellished with Dexter's refusal to acknowledge paternity. Dexter called Rayner again, the only friend who still supported him unconditionally. "She refused to take the test," he said when they met at the bar. "Classic manipulation," Rayner shook his head. "I saw something similar with my brother. His ex almost forced him to marry her by claiming she was pregnant. Turned out she wasn't." "You think Lorelei is lying about being pregnant?" Dexter frowned. "That's too much even for her." "I don't know," Rayner shrugged. "But the fact is, she refuses to take a test. Why, if she has nothing to hide?" Dexter sighed. Doubts were eating away at him. What if the child really was his? Would he be an absent father because of his pride and stubbornness? Or worse, never see his child grow up? "I don't know what to do," he admitted. Part of me just wants to accept everything as it is. Forget the betrayal, get Lorelei back and raise a family for the child. And the other part? Reiner asked. The other part screams that it's a trap. What if I go back to her now? She'll continue to lie and cheat, knowing that I won't leave because of the child. Reiner took a sip of his beer, looking thoughtfully at his friend. Listen, Dex, I can't make that decision for you. But think about this. If you go back to her now without knowing the truth, those doubts will always gnaw at you. Every time you look at the child, you'll wonder if it's yours. That's no basis for a healthy family. But how can I convince her to take the test? Dexter spread his hands. She's refused categorically. There are other options, Reiner lowered his voice. Non-invasive prenatal tests. They take blood from the mother, extract the fetus's DNA, and compare it to the father's DNA. No needles in the stomach, minimal risk. Dexter looked at his friend in surprise. How do you know all these details? My brother went through this, remember? Reiner shrugged. Talk to the doctor. If Lorelei really wants to prove that the child is yours, she'll agree to a test. After talking to Reiner, Dexter spent the evening researching prenatal DNA tests. Indeed, there were safe methods based on analyzing the mother's blood. He made a list of clinics that offered such a service and called Lorelei the next day. I found a safe way to verify paternity, he said, without preamble. No needles in the stomach, just a blood test. Completely safe for the baby. Are you still insisting on this? Lorelei's voice sounded tired. Dex, why can't you just believe me? Because you lost my trust, he replied bluntly. And if you really want me to be a part of this child's life, we need to start with the truth. The plain, unvarnished truth, backed up by science. Lorelei was silent for so long that Dexter wondered if the line had gone dead. Fine, she finally said. If that's the only way to convince you, I'll take the test. But I'm warning you, Dexter Morgan. Her voice grew cold. When the results prove that I was telling the truth, you're going to have to work hard to make up for this insult. If the results confirm what you say, Dexter replied, I'll be there for you and the child. But not as your husband, Lorelei. You closed that chapter of our lives when you decided to cheat on me. They agreed to meet in 2 days at the clinic. Dexter booked the first available appointment and paid all the expenses in advance. Internally, he was preparing himself for any outcome, positive or negative. If the child was his, he would be involved in his life, provide financial support, and be a real father. But he wouldn't go back to Lorelei. There had been too many lies and manipulations. On the day of the test, Dexter arrived at the clinic half an hour early. He was more nervous than he had ever been in his life. His future depended on the results of this test, not only his relationship with Lorelei, but also the possibility of becoming a father, something he had dreamed of for many years. Lorelei arrived right on time. She looked tense but determined. They hardly spoke while the paperwork was being filled out and the medical examination was being conducted. The doctor explained the procedure, a routine blood sample from Lorelei and a swab from Dexter's mouth to obtain his DNA. The results will be ready in a week, he said, filling out the last forms. You can pick them up in person or have them emailed to you, whichever you prefer. Email, they both said at the same time, then exchanged tense glances. As they left the clinic, Lorelei suddenly stopped and turned to Dexter. You know what's the saddest thing? She asked. We could have been happy. If you weren't so stubborn, so predictable. If you had done something spontaneous, risky, just once. Gone on that vacation with me, for example. And then you wouldn't have cheated on me. Dexter shook his head. Don't shift the blame, Lorelei. You made a choice. To lie, to betray, to destroy what we've built over 12 years. It was your choice, not mine. He turned and walked to his car, feeling Lorelei's heavy gaze on his back. A week of waiting lay ahead, the longest week of his life. Dexter stared at the computer screen for a long time, rereading the line, "Probability of paternity, 0%." The child was not his. Lorelei had lied, again, and it was the cruelest lie of all. He printed out the test results and headed straight for his parents' house. He sent copies of the results to everyone who had condemned him over the past few weeks. His sister, close friends, even his pastor. Not out of revenge. He needed the truth, pure and undeniable. A week later, Lorelei showed up at his doorstep. She looked haggard, her eyes frozen in despair. "Dex, I know I lied, and I know it was unforgivable," she began. "But I panicked. Tom left me when he found out about the baby. I was alone, scared." "And you decided to pin someone else's child on me," Dexter finished. "To use my dream of a family as a tool to manipulate me." "We could start over," she said pleadingly. "You would be a great father, I know." "No, Lorelei, it's over between us." She left in tears, and Dexter felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from his shoulders. Life slowly returned to normal. The divorce was finalized without any drama. His co-workers no longer looked at him with disapproval. His family had reconciled, and his friends invited him out again. One spring morning, 6 months later, Dexter woke up and realized he hadn't thought about Lorelei in days. The pain hadn't disappeared completely, but it had dulled, becoming part of his experience rather than the center of his existence. In the evening, he sat in the backyard watching the sunset. Reiner stopped by with a beer and news of Dexter's promotion at work. "You know," Dexter said, looking up at the orange sky, "I thought I'd never get over that betrayal. But here I am, breathing, living." "You're stronger than you think," Reiner said, raising his bottle in a toast. "Here's to a new beginning."